Moms for Liberty really worked miracles.
We have a crisis in America in public education. This is the future of our kids and our country.
You are joyful warriors.
And we are just getting started. Welcome to the Fire of Liberty show. I am your host, Tina Deskovich. I'm CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. Our show brings to you frontline warriors, moms and dads that are fighting in this culture war in America. And usually these moms and dads are kind of recent activists. They come to us because they saw a lesson in their child's backpack, or they realized a policy at the school district was really impacting the way they could raise their children, or it was overstepping and a place they thought they should be making the decision for their children. Yet the school district was making the decision, and they get fired up and engaged. And then they go through this whole journey of learning of how to be an activist and how to be engaged, and the whole world of kind of politics and education and all of these things open up to them. But our guest today isn't, I would say, a recent light bulb moment activist. He has a lifelong a sense of purpose in doing this kind of work. And so I'm excited to introduce you to him today. He is from Wisconsin. He is one of our Wisconsin state ambassadors. He is a former United States Air Force pilot, a longtime coach of children, and we are glad to have you here today, Bill Brewer.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. How was your trip to Florida?
It was pretty much uneventful. And then I got out of the airport and into the parking garage and realized just how humid it is down here. And after that shock, I think I'm okay now.
It's crazy. I fly into the little local Melbourne airport all the time. And, I travel a ton, and for me, airplanes are so cold. that I live like I'm freezing all the time. And so when I'm on airplanes, I have a sweatshirt from every city I travel to, because I'm like, I'm not that cold. And then I get in the airport and I just buy the cheap, Utah, Orlando, whatever the sweatshirt is. And so I always come off the plane in like 20,000 layers of clothes and socks and sneakers, because I'm bundled. And then I get off in the Melbourne airport, and the minute I step outside, I hear the birds and I feel the sun, and I have the humidity, and I start shedding layers. By the time I get to my car, I always take the socks off, because you don't wear socks in Florida, right? I always have my flip-flops right there on my driver's seat ready for me. And so,
well, for me, it's the opposite. I had to figure out, okay, I'm going to wear pants later today, because if I do, I'm going to hear pants is a no-no, right? Because it's way too hot and humid. But by the time I get back to Milwaukee tonight, I'll need them, so it's always a balance.
Is it cold there right now?
I wouldn't say it's cold. It's temperate. It'll be 75 today, I think. And it'll just be
cold at night then,
beautiful.
maybe.
It's probably, I think it was 48 this
morning. Oh my gosh, that's the dead of winter. Yep.
Oh, it's not a problem.
Well, we are glad you came all the way from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too.
I want to start out talking a little bit about you. Just like tell us a little bit about yourself, children, married. Just introduce Bill Brewer to Moms for Liberty.
Yeah. So first of all, I got to do the shouts out. I'm just really thankful to the Lord Jesus that I'm here today. That's faith in him is interwoven in my life, and that's just who I am. So it's going to leak out a lot here when we're talking. Second shout out is to my beautiful bride, Cindy, who will be married 15 years in November.
Congratulations.
Thank you. She's amazing. And she's extremely supportive of what I'm doing. And I'm so thankful and blessed to be married to her. And the third shout out, and this is a preservation kind of a thing. I want to make sure that I give a shout out to my Wisconsin sisters, especially our ambassadors, Laura and Amber and Scarlett. I know that if I don't say so, I'm never going to hear the end of it. So
so you are an ambassador for Moms for Liberty, which means you work with roughly 130,000 women.
Yeah.
No small task.
Right. Yeah.
You are the second man we've had on the podcast in just 18 episodes. So I think men are getting their fair share.
Proportional anyway, probably. Yeah, for sure.
Proportional. Let's just go out the gate with that question. What's it like to work with so many women?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what people are thinking.
I thought we might warm up to that question.
No. I think we're going to go right out
the gate. There's a constant reminder there, a few constant reminders for me as I go through this, right? First thing is, it's really important to understand that there is a role that men really should be playing that we've somewhat abdicated. And what do I mean by that? That's not to knock men or anything, or just to be, just to say it, just to kind of placate folks. But when an issue comes home, and if there are two parents in the home, and I'm going to start there, if there are two parents in the home, they both have roles to play in the upbringing of their children. And it shouldn't be left to just the mom to do the school thing, or to do, you know, you do these things, I do those things, and we never, cross over. If there's an issue with a child in the home, I think that as the protector, men should really step up and be that, and lock arms with their wives and say, how are we going to handle this? And so I've taken the lesson that there is a role that I really would love to see men playing. So I'll take the arrows once in a while. Oh, you identify as a mom, ha ha ha. And I'm like, I never heard that one before, but it's interesting. That's the first reminder that I have. The other thing, though, when it comes to working, understanding that men and women really are different. And I know that there's several ways that we can say that really should be obvious, right? In some of the issues of the day, it really should be obvious, but it's not. But we have to remember that too, that I have to remember that too, that women are different than men. They're made up differently. They're motivated by different things. And so remember that the number one thing that I think most women are looking for really is security. I mean, I'm husband to one wife, and I understand that, the best thing I can do for her is to make sure that she feels secure. And so when I think about that and extend that out to try to promote that with ladies when they bring issues to us as ambassadors, and maybe they're venting or whatever that might be, they've got a relationship issue with someone else in the organization or someone in their circle, whatever, is to help them to understand, hey, refocus on your purpose. Who has God made you to be? Be secure in that, and then launch forward from there, and you can resolve that issue, whatever that is. And we even see that within our own ranks sometimes, and I mean, we're a family. It's like we were talking about before. Families have issues, we have dynamics, we have, a little conflict here and there, but we got to remember that first and foremost, set aside the emotion for just a moment. Remember that other person, that other lady, has reasons that they're doing what they're doing. They have motivations, and maybe they're even having a bad day. It could be something that's just momentary. You don't know. So please don't presuppose. Take a step back, take a deep breath, don't take it personally, and seek to understand what she is saying, the other lady in the conflict.
So take that back a few steps, back to men. And you said you'd like to see more of them engaged with issues with their children at school. And so why do you think we don't see as many men showing up at school board meetings or doing this type of activism?
I really think that quite too often it's an abdication of the role, not understanding what the role of the male in the home really should be. As a leader in the home, that doesn't mean that you're chief and you're authoritarian. And really, at the end of the day, from the very beginning, it's about being a servant. And so when I look at my home and I look at my kids and I look at those, I'm there to serve. And that's my whole life is about that. And I'm not saying that as a feather in my cap. That's grounded and rooted in faith. I mean, that's how Jesus is leading his entire church. He's the servant king. And so I'm there to serve. And so when there is an issue in the home, I should be there to serve, to solve that issue, and be the strength that my wife or my kids would need to get beyond that. So why don't we see that? I don't think enough men understand that their role is as a servant, but a servant leader. Like, don't just serve and shrink to the background and let her take care of it, kind of a thing, right? Take the lead, but do so with everyone else in mind and making sure that they're well cared for.
I love the conversation of servant leadership. And I think we'll probably take that through this whole conversation, because if I think about what I know of your life story, servant leadership, maybe that's what we should have called this episode, either sense of purpose, which we did call it, or servant leader. But do you think that maybe men are, you say abdicated, but maybe they are working 80 hours a week and they just can't get to that? Or do you think maybe even they are helping support behind the scenes at home? I know some husbands that are fully supporting what their wife is doing, but they are not the ones showing up. But, they'll make sure they're taking care of the kids while the wife goes and speaks. And, that's also a equally huge role in supporting this work going forward. So I think there's probably a variety of reasons, but I'm just looking for from your perspective of what you're seeing.
So the context I was using is really within the home, right? So as an example, you just brought up an example of husbands who are very supportive of their wives doing this work, 100%. I'm fully on board with that. That's more of an organizational thing. But when you look at the fabric of any society, and certainly ours, the basic unit is the family unit. And so when it comes to me and my house, if you will, that role is not for others to take. It's really something that we as men have to take seriously. And so when I talk about abdicating the role, I simply mean, number one, to say I'm working 80 hours a week. Why? Why are you working 80 hours a week? If it's not for your family, then who's it for?
No.
So if you're working 80 hours a week, but you can't get involved in the issues, the emotional or other issue, educational issues in your own home, then you might want to maybe take another look at your priorities and say, well, maybe I don't need whatever your motivation is. I'm not going to presuppose that, right?
Yeah.
But there's an end purpose, an end goal to all of that work. And it, if you're talking in the role of, the family unit, it really should be in service to the family. And if the family needs to be well cared for in all aspects, that doesn't just mean the bank account. It doesn't just mean the roof over the head. It means that plus a lot more important things.
I love this conversation. One of the things about Moms for Liberty, when I'm speaking in general terms about it as an organization and why we do what we do, it's because the family is the fundamental unit of society. And with the government overreach and the policies that are interjecting and breaking the ties between parents and children, that's the first step in destroying our country.
Yes,
and some people say, oh, that's a little extreme. But if you watch and you study history, you break the family up, that breaks communities up, that breaks bigger communities up, and ultimately the fabric of your country is divided and broken. And so it's not hyperbole, and it's not some made up tin hat wearing thing. It's happened in history. People like you and I are seeing it happening in America. And that's why Moms for Liberty.
That's right. And we see it happening in other places too, that are further down this path, where we can go back 20, 30 years and they were where we are. And now we see what happens if it's not addressed, which is why when I think about our mission, I love the fact that it begins with, we are fighting for the survival of America. And honestly, sometimes I look at that and I wonder if we should unbold the unify, educate, and empower, and bold fighting for the survival of America, because that's really what it's about.
You are 100% correct. And sometimes when I'm stating the mission, I leave out, we're fighting for the survival of America, just to shorten it.
I have to.
Yeah,
yes.
but you're
it's
right.
Easy to do.
It is easy to do, because it's like, oh, we're fighting for this. Plus, some people say, oh, that, really, is America really at risk? And yes, it is. That's why it's in the mission.
It is.
So I love that you have a clear understanding of our mission. I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you state our mission?
We're fighting for the survival of America by unifying and educating and empowering parents to defend the parental rights at all levels of government.
Oh man, if I had a gold star right now, like you would get it right there on the head of yours. Yeah. Just so for those at home that are watching and listening, our mission drives this organization. We try very hard to work to stay mission focused, because how else are you going to keep 130,000 volunteers marching in the same direction?
Yeah.
There's literally no other way than having a solid mission statement that you keep pointing to.
Yeah.
And so I want to go to the Wayback Machine, like I do sometimes on this show, because of your long life of service, your style of leadership, I think is fascinating. And I think all of that was sparked at some point early on in your life. Was it your family? Was it your father? Was there a moment? Like, when did you become such a patriotic servant leader?
Yeah. Growing up in my early childhood, I think like most kids do, but patriotism maybe isn't one of the first things I would think about. But for me, the first watershed moment I had was when I had the chance to attend something called Badger Boys State and Girls State, an American Legion program that's in most states. I think at that time, way back then, was like 45 out of the 50 states. And you get a collection of high school juniors that go to a college campus and run a mock state government. And it's like this living object lesson on civics for your state. Well, it was really there that I first cried at the national anthem. It's really there that I first got interested on, how does government really work? And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm some huge student of government ever since 16 years old, but at the same time, understanding that there's a bigger calling for our nation, a bigger purpose for our nation, that we're about something different and unique as compared to every other society in the world. Believe it or not, that whole understanding began in that in that that kind of microcosm of civics, which is why it's so important that we continue to fight to reintroduce the accurate view of our history in all forms of education for, K-12, whether it's public or private, doesn't matter. We need to have that so people understand where we live and what we're about.
That boys state and there's a girls state program. I
Mhm.
think they're still in existence. I
Mhm.
remember, I know I've seen girls email us before and ask for
Mhm.
recommendations to go to girls state. I'm assuming
Yes.
it's the same thing. I've not looked into that program. Have you looked at it in the last several years? Has
I
it
have
been
not.
corrupted or is it still?
I have not looked into it.
Might
I'm
be
going to
worth us
draw
to-
an assumption that it's okay because it's run by the American Legion, but I'm not an expert.
Interesting. That might be something
Yeah.
like somebody take note and email me later and remind me to look into that, please.
Yeah.
Because it had such a moment to inspire you. I'm assuming it's inspired thousands of other
Sure.
young men and young women
Yep.
across the country. So let's hope that that's still a solid program
Yeah,
that is
absolutely.
inspiring them. So I love that you say you cried at the national anthem.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that
Yeah.
moment for a second. Was it like at the beginning of this experience? Were you there for a few days? Was it at the end of the
Mhm.
experience? When was it?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it's I want to say 5 days. It's like 4
Okay.
or 5 days, right? It was at the end of the experience. This is also where I understood that I was comfortable speaking in front of people. That's
Yeah,
how I
which you're really good
figured
at.
that out.
So
Well, I, we have our giftings and stuff, and
yeah.
there's plenty of stuff I'm not gifted in, so I'm going to use that gift as much as I can, I guess. But I remember being on stage. I was actually elected lieutenant governor, and so
Fancy.
well, I got the gavel. I guess that's all I got out of that piece of it.
Yeah.
But what I understood in that moment as I was standing on stage and they were playing the national anthem, I think it was part of it was the entirety of the experience because there was really a lot of work that went into getting to that point. It was certainly the bit of euphoria that you get when you've accomplished something, in that case, being elected to an office and having the opportunity to speak to several hundred. I think there was maybe 1,000 people there or something like that because there was a lot of press and parents and a lot of people
That's
there.
a lot of pressure for a high school kid.
Yeah, it was fine. It was fun, but that moment of really thinking about the words to our national anthem and hearing that and looking at the flag and then kind of getting an understanding as you're immersed in that. Again, how unique is our nation, like, and our history, and you know, even the fact that people who look like me, people of African descent, or have that in some of their background, we should still be able to love this nation because we're very unique in what we deliver when it came to things like slavery and abolishing slavery and the journey since then. It's a unique story that we can't ignore or pretend never happened. But at the same time, let's not ignore the progress that we've made since Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, since Juneteenth in 1865. What's happened since then? We can't ignore all that. And so for whatever reason, all that kind of hit me all at the same time as a 16-year-old listening to the national anthem. So I think that's why I first cried.
I think we need more of that. So when I heard this story for the first time, I thought, oh, I have that moment too. So
Mhm.
mine was just around the corner from here
Sure.
at my middle school that I was junior high at the time.
Yep.
And we were watching a space shuttle go off. Like here in Florida on the Space Coast, you have fire drills during launches so that you can go out. That should dual purpose fire drills.
Well
Yeah.
played,
And
yeah.
so you know how it was back in the day, you all go and you line up outside
Sure.
and then, oh, wow, also a space shuttle is going off right now. And so I had just moved here in middle school and everyone else kind of grew up here. So it was nothing to them. They were all goofing off. And I just stood there in the parking lot. I think they may have ended up capturing that picture in the yearbook too, which is a little embarrassing. But I've got my mouth open, looking up at the sky, just in awe of what we were able to do with with little tear coming down. And so
that's great.
But it was the same type of moment.
Yeah.
And also, in middle school, I had an amazing American history teacher.
Sure.
To this day, I don't think I know her political affiliation,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still associated with her in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Just taught me about the founding fathers
Yeah.
and what they did. And,
Yeah.
we memorized the preamble to the Constitution and part of the Declaration of Independence that I can still recite,
Mhm.
but it instilled in me what is unique and beautiful
Yes.
about our form of government and our
Mhm.
country. And for the first time in American history, taking power from a
Yes.
sovereign basically, and giving it to the people in general. And it's
Yep.
messy. Oh, is it
yeah.
messy?
Yeah.
But so I think you and I are, brothers and sisters in this, or brother
Mhm.
and sister in this deep patriotism. And
Mhm.
so, and it
Sure.
started about the same time in our
Yeah.
life.
Yep.
I was in 8th or 9th grade, and you were a junior, you said, and so not too far apart. Must be very important to have civic education
Yeah.
in middle school and high school.
And the broader lesson too is how indelibly things are marked in moments in a young person's life, and we have to kind of always remember that too with the work that we're doing and trying to prevent government overreach, is because we know that there are going to be those seminal moments, but who's doing the imprinting? How is that imprinting being done? That speaks, if you keep tracing that back, to the survival of America. Honestly, that's where it all ties together.
Oh, so agree with that.
So.
And so you want your family to be doing majority of that imprinting,
Mhm.
or if they're going to school, you want the people at the school around them to at least have the same basic principles and
Mhm.
values. And
Mhm.
so that's why there's this huge cultural divide in America right
Mhm.
now, is there are people that have a whole different worldview, a whole different set of principles and values that aren't traditionally American principles
Sure.
and values. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
I know everyone in Moms for Liberty understands that, but
Mhm.
sometimes folks outside of Moms for Liberty watch this show. So I think it's important to
Yeah.
to explain what we think is happening in
Mhm.
America.
You bet.
And so Bill, the patriotic young man,
Sure.
is leaving high school,
Mhm.
and somehow you end up at the Air Force Academy, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Was that because, like, oh, I cried at the national anthem and now I got to be in the
Yeah,
military.
therefore,
Therefore, I
yeah.
need to join the military and fight for the survival of
Yeah.
America.
No, it's not quite that storybook. It was
Hmm.
interesting. My dad, I think, and he passed away several years ago, but he would agree. He's probably going to laugh at me from heaven when I say this, but he was going to have a kid that graduated from a service academy no matter what.
How
I mean,
many
that was
kids did he have?
4.
Okay. Did he go to a service academy?
No, but he was enlisted in the Air Force
Okay.
for a couple of years. And so my older sister was admitted to the Naval Academy and chose not to go.
Oh, jeez.
My older brother was admitted to the Air Force Academy and didn't make it through his freshman year, and whatever. And so I'm like, oh, okay.
It's on you.
I guess so. Here it comes, and I wanted to go to business school. I mean, that's what I wanted to do, either that or become a chemical engineer. I was literally trying to figure out which one of those I wanted to
You
do.
do not remind me of an engineer at
No,
all.
I have an
No.
engineering degree.
Do you really?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All
Yep,
right.
you bet. And so he began to talk to me about, hey, the benefits of the service academy, and maybe there wasn't a whole lot of money as far as like paying for school.
Selling
And I'm
his
like,
kids on this.
I can get a scholarship, It's like, so we kind of had the little back and forth there, but I went in and I applied, and I was admitted. And then it really kind of ratcheted up like, hey, you've got this opportunity. And so I said, well, all right, I'll give it a try. Right. And it's not like I didn't want to serve my country. The idea of being in the military didn't bother me, but it just wasn't my ultimate goal right at the time. But I like to remind myself and to tell people when they ask about this, I went because he wanted me to go, but I stayed because I wanted to be there. And I figured that out in the first few weeks of even just going through basic cadet training there, that okay, this is the right spot. This is where I'm supposed to be.
Why did you know it was the right spot? What happened?
Because of the greater sense of purpose. It was because there's a mission that's much bigger than yourself. And if you're open to the lesson, you learn that right away. And being able to be around, 20 something, 30 something guys and gals that are all there for this. Maybe they came for different reasons, but if they're going to make it through, they're going to stay for the same reason.
Was that your class size? 30?
No, that was one of like 40. They admit about, I think it's 1,500 cadets a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And actually our class, True Blue 92, was the first to graduate even 1,000. So the attrition rate is really big. It's usually 35, 40%.
Did you graduate high school in 92?
I graduated high school in 88.
Okay.
True
Sorry.
Blue 92.
That's when you left.
That's when we
You're
graduated.
the class of 92.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Of 92.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's okay.
I thought we
I
had
know I threw that one in there.
Yeah,
It was
I
a
was like,
curveball.
oh, I graduated in
True
92.
Blue
We were the
92.
same age. It turns out you're older.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. I appreciate that. But so yeah, I stayed because there was clearly a sense of purpose, and I knew that I wanted to stay in the military, do what I could do to serve my country. If that meant never being in combat, so be it. If that meant I would see several tours, so be it. it was the right thing to do, and I knew it.
You were in it for the mission.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then at what point did you decide to be a pilot? Because that's a whole nother level of being in the Air Force. I mean, not everybody in the Air Force is a pilot. So at what point did you say, I'm going to fly planes?
Yeah. Well, again, that wasn't a lot of folks go to the academy because coming out of the academy, you're an officer. And, in almost every case in the military, to be a pilot, you have to first be an officer, right? So a lot of people came to the Air Force Academy because they wanted to be Air Force pilots. That was not my story. But as we got into senior year, we actually had to compete for spots because spots were limited because, during those years, you think about the Clinton years, we were shrinking the military and our class was really big. So you got these two kind of forces going together to say, about a third of the folks that physically qualify to go to flight school, we don't have spots for them. So there was actually a kind of a competitive ranking. And when I got one of those spots, the first thing I thought of was, who gets a chance to do this?
Yeah.
Like, that's a privilege. I can't just walk away from that. And so again, it wasn't because I wanted to be, Tom Cruise or something, it was because, okay, I've been given this gift. I need to go ahead and play this out and do my best to do it. And so I chose a pilot training date that was about a year after graduation, went down to Texas, spent a year down there and graduated flight school and flew planes.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Opportunities, just doors opening, windows opening.
Mm-hmm.
We say here at Moms for Liberty on the national team, we just say yes. Opportunities present themselves and you say yes and you figure it out. Often you don't know how you're going to do it or how it's going to play out, but you say yes when a good opportunity lands on your doorstep.
One of my new slogans is challenge accepted.
Oh, that's way better. Mission impossible, right?
Yeah. The challenge comes, challenge accepted. Let's do it.
I'm going to get that on my wall. Where could we put that in here?
I don't have a trademark, so you're okay.
Okay.
Go ahead and use it.
We have an attorney for that. So tell me some things you learned going to officer training school. I imagine there's a lot of leadership type classes and things that are instilled in you during that time period.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things, because the rest of us really haven't had the opportunity to go to officer training school.
Yeah.
So could you share a few things you took away from
that? Certainly. Every year we have not only academic classes, but military studies. And it was professional military studies, or interesting, PMS for short. So, which was another set of lessons for later, but anyway. One of the things that I took from that, my freshman year, I had, and I don't know if he's even up, Captain Bob Angwin. I don't know why I remember this man's name other than he was really funny, but he taught a lot of good lessons. And one of the first things that he told us was, look around you. There's 21 people in the class. He says, what I'm about to tell you right now, he says, I guarantee maybe 2 or 3 of you will remember. He says, so you need to listen, but you won't.
Here you are 30 years later and you remembered.
I remembered.
So let's hear it.
He said, when you go to your first base, you're going to be an officer. You're going to probably have command of several enlisted people. Most of them have been around the block a lot longer than you. You're just getting started. A lot of the people in your command are going to be 8, 10, 12 years in. So you've got, your second lieutenant bars. The first thing you need to do is go find someone who's been in, the grizzled old sergeant or whatever you want to call him, 8 to 10 years in, and go to him or her and say, yeah, I'm an officer. Yeah, I'm in charge, but I don't know what I'm doing. So can you help me? Can you show me the ropes? Can you be humble enough to do that? And that really also speaks right into the lessons of servant leadership, right? To be able to be transparent about your own shortcomings as well as your strengths. And how do I fit into the fabric of the team? Like, what does the team really look like? And in this case, I'm just being introduced to the team. There was already a team there. Mm-hmm. So I'm the one that's got to own being able to get myself woven into that fabric. And how do I help these folks be successful? And when he said that, I'm like, I'm going to be one of your 2 or 3. There's no way I'm not going to, because I don't want to go there and flop on my face. And I don't want to go there and go against the grain of what these folks are actually trying to do in service of our nation. I need to integrate into that and try to help them be better. And so even as I kind of move my hand, it's find out where you fit and then support them so that they excel. And that's what I took from that.
I think not only did you take from that, to translate that into what you're doing now with Moms for Liberty.
Yes.
You are, I'm not sure if you know this, but you are our only ambassador that's not a chapter chair.
Yes.
And so usually we hire our chapter chairs in states to serve as ambassadors. But with you, you came highly recommended, but you were not a chapter chair. And I had a lot of reservations. I was like, no, you know, we're going to break the mold here. I don't think it's a good idea. And your ladies,
And he's a guy.
and he's a man. Well, how is he going to do the job?
What does he know?
But you had to use those skills that you learned that day from that captain,
Yes.
was he a captain? Because if you would have come in as not a chapter chair, to the rest of the people around the state, the other chapter leaders, and helped whatever, give some guidance, give some counsel, give some recommendations from top down,
Yes.
it would have blown up, because we've done that. We tried. So at Moms for Liberty, I'd say we were about 2 years old. I had the brilliant idea that we were going to have not state ambassadors, but state directors, right? Every nonprofit or political organization with a grassroots game has a state director. And I'm like, oh, we have to have a state director.
Yep.
So we hired our first state director in a state. Lovely woman, really a good woman, knew the issues, understood her stuff. I think she served on a school board on check. I think her leadership style may have been more top down than this weaving you're talking about. And it caused, I mean, our independent chapter leaders were not happy. Pushback.
Sure.
It caused discord among everyone. Why is she telling me what to do? I've been doing this for 2 years. This is my chapter. This is my county. I haven't heard an iota of that from Wisconsin with you there. So it tells me that Captain whatever, what was his name?
Bob Angwin.
Captain Angwin, if you're out there.
If you're out there.
Bill took away, Bill listened, and he's using those skills now to even serve Moms for Liberty. So I love seeing it like thread through your life now and what you're doing.
You know, and it's interesting, right? If your leadership style is more I'll call it authoritative. I mean, there's several words you could probably use, but authoritative, it's more like positional. I have the title, therefore I'm your leader, follow me kind of a thing. It'll drive you to some behavior that really is not healthy. And like, I think immediately as you were talking, we have chapter chairs in Wisconsin who they're doing just fine. They don't need my help. And so guess what? I don't help them. Not because, not because I can't. Maybe I could see some things that they could do differently. But if I ask someone, do you need my help? And they say, no, I'm just going to take them at their word. And if I'm willing to be there often enough, they'll know, because of me being genuine and authentic with them, that if they do have an issue, they can reach out. And you see some of that, right? And so I have to remind myself, and my wife's going to laugh, I'm not chasing anybody. I don't need to chase people. There are plenty of folks who might need some help who, when I offer it, they say yes. And so I help them, whether they don't have a chapter yet, because obviously that's what you asked us to do as ambassadors, to grow the organization. So we're trying to open new chapters all the time. We've got several irons in the fire that way. But we've always thought, and even though it wasn't told to us, that one of our purposes needed to be to strengthen the chapters that we already have, so that they always feel supported, even at a more local level. So great chapter support folks from national, no knock on them at all. At the same time, it's kind of nice to be able to call somebody that can drive to you in a weekend if you need them to, right? Or whatever that
show
might
up and
be.
support your event.
Yeah, exactly. Like so I think, again, this is it's important as leaders, because I think about too, when it comes to our chapters, we're one of those states that has county chapters, obviously, but we don't have county school districts. There are 72 counties in Wisconsin and 421 school districts in Wisconsin. And so pretty much all of our chapter chairs have the ability, or have the scope of maybe having several district leads or whatever, or having to be aware of different issues in different places, which means if your chapter is going to grow or just be stronger, if you want to help someone beyond your own home school district, then you've got to empower other people to be not only your eyes and ears as the leader, but to also say, these are the things I need to do. Okay, do it. What do you need? How can I help you? And I know we'll get into this later, but you know, that form of leadership, the volunteer leader, I mean, I subscribe wholeheartedly to the John Maxwell definition of leadership. Leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less, right? That is indelibly in my brain. And the most pure form of leadership is the leader of a volunteer army. A volunteer who leads a volunteer army, you have no position, you have no authority, you have a title, and people look to you, but you're only going to grow as a leader, and the organization, as it is, formal or not, is only going to grow and thrive if you exercise as a leader influence, which is really all about finding out what's important to these folks that you're leading, meet them at their point of need, help them understand how to meet their own needs, and grow as people too. And that's, if you're not doing that, then you're really not leading, in my opinion.
I think we're going to clip that and use that at trainings for chapter chairs. We might need to start a whole, I don't know, like a series of leadership tips by Bill. Because leading volunteers is way different than
Very
leading
different.
in a paid organization.
Very different.
And I'm glad you articulated that today. All of Moms for Liberty chapter leaders and members are all volunteers.
All volunteers.
Many other positions in Moms for Liberty are either volunteer or, we pay for gas or mileage or something of that fashion. And so people are doing it because of that mission, and you can't treat them the same. You can't have even the same expectations as you do on somebody that's making, $50,000-$100,000 salary. So
Yep.
very important.
Yeah,
Very important.
Agreed.
So that was some takeaways from your time at not flight school, but the
academy,
the Air Force Academy. Yeah.
Yep. And some stuff.
And so then you're serving in the Air Force for how many years?
Active duty for about 5 years.
Okay.
Cut short. It was cut short because of a medical challenge.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine. God had a different plan.
Well, and as a pilot, anything's a medical challenge, really. Like everything is so strict for being a pilot. And so just as a side note, not that probably any of our chapter leaders that are watching right now have a clue what this is, but you flew KC-130s.
KC-135s.
135s.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
And so, and as a point of, I didn't work on them like a mechanic. I worked on the proposals for them bidding in early 2000s when the Air Force was working to replace they're called tankers. They're the refueling, right? They have the boom that comes off. And so I was in the proposal center creating the graphics and working on building those massive 1,000-page proposals to go to the Air Force. And so I feel intimate with the plane that you flew with all the schematics and graphics that we had to create. And so why the KC-135?
Well, some of that I didn't sort of choose.
Okay.
I mean, because when you're an active duty officer in flight school, so in flight school, there are some who are there because they're tied with a National Guard, which is state by state, and they already know the airframe or airframes in the Guard. So once you get through flight school, as you graduate flight school, you know what aircraft you're going into. For the active duty, it really is all about, for this specific class, what planes do we need to fill? How many slots is that? And then it just winds up being where you're ranked. And so if I remember correctly, I was probably middle of the pack, and there were only a couple like fighter bomber. Everybody else got a heavy, and that's what we called them. So he's either cargo or tanker. And I'm like, okay.
Tanker sounds fun.
Tanker sounds fun. Who doesn't want to fly around with flammable liquid all around you, and then give it to someone else 35,000 feet. It just sounds smart.
It's wild.
It's
crazy. Wild to watch the videos of them refueling planes. So any lessons for those listening that you learned is from being a pilot?
Yeah.
It's a whole nother level of training.
Yeah.
You have to.
Preparation, knowing your stuff. Like as a pilot, the first thing you have to learn are things like emergency procedures, as well as the operations of the aircraft. So it takes some homework. You might have to go slow to go fast, learn some things. I think the biggest lesson, though, I took from flight school and from flying in particular, we always use the term complacency kills. That's how we said it, right?
Oh, tell me about that. What does that mean?
Yeah,
that sounds very like it has to do with Moms for Liberty.
Yeah,
so I want to hear this.
You can. There's an element when you have responsibility. There's an element of never quite resting, and you've got to be okay with that. In the aircraft, you're constantly doing what's called a cross check. I could be at 35,000 feet going straight and level, but I'm still doing a cross check of my instruments. I'm making sure that the switches are where they're supposed to be. We're straight and level. We're maintaining the right altitude, and basically she'll go hands free on the throttle and on the yoke, and it should just fly straight until you're ready to do something different. And when it's time, like in the air refueling in that mission, there are things to do as the aircraft is approaching. There's things to do while the aircraft is linked to you. There's things to do once it leaves. And so you've got to be aware at all times. And during those critical phases of flight, it's especially important to be fully aware. If you ever get complacent, that's when bad things can happen. When I think about that as it relates to Moms for Liberty, it's not enough, and I'll use some real example. It's not enough to be aware of the acronym CRT or SEL. It's not enough. How does that apply to your school district? How does it evolve in your school district? So as an example, SEL, social emotional learning, maybe had less of an impact directly on my home school district until some unfortunate things happened and the school decided to introduce a formal SEL curriculum in our middle school. And understanding that, for me, it's important to know, what is that curriculum really about? Why are they implementing it? And what could it evolve into? How is the same concept being applied in high school? How are they different? Taking those lessons and being vigilant, even if there's not action today, because I know the receptivity may not be there to changing some things, continually being aware of what's happening, doing my cross check and watching through it. As administration maybe changes, or the climate changes, well, now what? Is now a good time to start to introduce some truth and concepts and understanding and elevate their understanding of what the eventual outcome of all this stuff is, that maybe I couldn't have said 2 years ago, when I was in the throes of, I just ran for school board, I'm going to again, and all that sort of stuff. And so, which is a whole nother story. But anyway, in that meantime, you can't get complacent. You can't just take your rest and say, well, I guess I lost that fight.
Yeah.
You've got to stay vigilant. And when you are fighting for the survival of America, it's kind of trite to say there isn't a day off, but it kind of is that way. You do have to lay down your sword sometimes and just take some time away to recharge. But in general, just stay vigilant, stay involved, stay aware, keep going to the school board meetings, even if you're the only one there. So what? It doesn't matter. Folks will arrive when you need them to, if there's an issue that arises that needs the public's attention.
I'm never going to be on a plane again and hear flight attendants cross-check and not think about this conversation with you again. I've never paid attention to them saying it. I've never thought about that word or even what it meant. You just hear it every time you just know that it's time to put your tray table up, probably. And all the things I have to do. But I've never thought about what that really means. And as you were speaking, I thought, I cross-check Moms for Liberty every morning, 7 days a week.
Good.
100 times a day, probably. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing that. Right. I get on and I'm like, I check every social account. Well, how's that working? What's going on? What comments are being said? Or is it everything on mission? Then every Monday morning, I check, where are we with our email stats? Where are we with our chapter count? I am constant. I have, 22 tabs. I counted them last night because somebody asked me, how many tabs do you have open? And I said 22 on one browser and 16 on another. But I literally go and I cross-check. That's exactly what I'm doing. I love this new vocabulary you're introducing. And I love that individuals, how you articulated it to the most local grassroots level, and how every parent needs to be cross-checking what's going on in schools with curriculum, with the threats even that are out there. And now would be a great time to plug M4L Academy. So you can go to m4lacademy.org, as I'm sure you know, formerly known as M4LU, m4lu.org. We just recently did a rebrand, launched a new website. Every month we focus on a new issue. And so if you're a parent that wants to know about SEL or CRT, like what is that? What do I need to be concerned about? What potentially is coming? What do I need to look for? m4lacademy.org is the place to go. It's going to be the one education hub for parents to go to. And so they don't have to go. We actually, at the bottom of each toolkit now, I don't know if you've been to the new website. We just launched it like 2 days ago. Missy, who's our director,
doing a great job, by the way.
M4L Academy.
She really is.
She has created at the bottom an actual bunny rabbit at the bottom of every toolkit that says rabbit hole, where she's dumping all of the things for those that just want to, keep learning, keep digging. And so by
the way, I love the fact that it's available not just live, but most of the stuff is available on demand too, because I do have a day job that's not Moms for Liberty. And so I can't always be on, there is time. You have to do things when you can do them sometimes. So it's really helpful to have that.
Well, you're welcome for that. And moms too, super busy, obviously. Never know their schedule. Like 3 kids have the stomach flu this week. I can't watch anything. And so, we try to make everything as of right now, still everything is free,
Yep.
accessible.
Yep.
You just go and consume and participate.
That's invaluable. It really is. Because you say maybe it's the kids, but even just normal day to day, kids' activities, sports, whatever that might be, back and forth here, running errands, whatever, to be able to go somewhere and listen for 30 minutes while I'm driving back and forth here. That kind of stuff's invaluable. That time is really important. So thanks to everybody that does that.
Yeah, there's a whole team of people that are working hard to
Mhm.
produce that. So at some point you decide you're going to run for school board.
Yes. Yeah. Because I needed drama in my life.
Well, you have a sense. I
teasing.
know school board races and even serving on a school board. I've been there. I've done.
Yeah, I
that.
know.
But you have a sense of purpose in your life. You
Mhm.
obviously are very patriotic.
Mhm.
Your path, doors are opening, windows are opening. You're taking all
Mhm.
those opportunities.
Mhm.
How in the world did you end up running for school board?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So for a lot of years, this is one of the things I've drawn from examples in my younger time, but it's sort of been a constant thread. Youth, like volunteering, related to youth. And one of the ways that's played itself out a lot in my life is as a coach. 6 years, I ran our youth football organization plus high school booster club for football. So, which is where I learned a lot about leading volunteers too, building a good organization, a growing organization through volunteers and through influence. So that's been some really invaluable lessons, as I already shared. But anyway, I wanted to continue to serve my community, and it was something to me that, hey, I'm not always going to be president of this board or whatever, so I want to shift gears. And I got the idea of just wanting to run for school because I just wanted to. And I spoke to our superintendent about it, took some advice. And so when the time was approaching that I would run for school board, that I was already planning on doing it, that's when I first learned about critical race theory. And I learned from my good friend now, Scarlett Johnson, who I had only heard of tangentially before then, and went to a talk she was giving on a Sunday afternoon, a rainy Sunday afternoon, in a bowling alley in our district.
Moms for Liberty members are not afraid to go anywhere to
speak. Right. Yeah. And so I learned about critical race theory, and as a Black man who had worked with hundreds of families in my district, my school district, and basically my district is primarily white, and felt that love from those families. Why? Because I'm adding value to their family home by giving their kids a really good experience through sports primarily, or as a youth pastor, and I've done that a lot over the years being a pastor. I really felt like it was important for me to share with the community that, hey, this is 2021. Don't believe the prevailing message in the media that people who look like me feel oppressed and people who look like you are the oppressors. And that was just burning in my heart. And so I approached our superintendent in May of 21, and he said, please wait till June because we're going to take off the masks for COVID in May of 21. And your message is too important to get lost in that because that'll be big news. Okay. So I waited. In the meantime, I was vacationing with my bride in the Smoky Mountains. And one lazy afternoon, I jumped on Facebook and I was watching a video that Scarlett had posted of some instruction that was being given to our teachers in our state, that being on time was a European and therefore white supremacist concept. And I'm just looking at this and I'm watching, and I'm trying to find if there's any nugget of logic in what this man is saying. Not a bit. People of color come from temperate climates and they have several growing seasons, so they're not constrained. But people who are from Europe, they're normally north of this latitude and it's cold, so they only have one growing season. So they have to plant at this time and harvest at that time. And if they don't do it, they'll starve all winter. And I'm like, you might not have said anything more ridiculous in that moment. And then I realized, it hit me, our state Department of Education is paying for this person to tell our teachers
probably a
this
lot
garbage.
of money. And let's just think realistically for a minute. My ancestors are mostly from Europe or Eastern Europe, but I don't have a clue about how they were farmers or growing seasons
But
3,
it's in your
4,
culture.
5 generations ago. And
Yeah,
do you I don't know where your ancestors are from, but for him to even assume because the color of your skin that your ancestors are from warmer climates,
right, exactly.
The whole thing is just absurd.
Right, exactly. Much of my ancestry is Native American, so they're in this climate. I've got some European. I'm kind of a mutt genetically, so like most people probably are.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was, Cindy, look at this, and I just was, I'm definitely going to say this now. And so I started a Facebook page right there on the spot, and over 100 people joined in like a week, and went and made this statement in front of the school board. And I said, I'm just going to ask you, and it's all recorded, like the media was there and everything, which I wasn't expecting. I'm just going to ask you to please look at our curriculum and make sure that none of this stuff is, I don't believe it is here, but can you just help with that? Because I didn't really know how the school board really interacted with curriculum, but they're in charge. Reelect these folks. I vote for them every year. I try to, who should I vote for this year?
So what stuff specifically were you concerned about and speaking about?
Specifically what is in our curriculum? Because as it's been revealed, it's not just say in the history book, or it's not just in the social studies curriculum. I mean, you can find this stuff interwoven with, word problems in a math book. And I mean, it's kind of,
you just
everywhere.
keep saying this stuff, and I'm picturing
critical race theory.
Right.
Yes.
But let's even could you give an example or two? Because many of our members obviously know they've been experiencing it, but sometimes, again, this podcast reaches those that may not know. So why is this stuff so concerning? And what's an example of it?
Yeah. So critical race theory at its core, I mean, it's labeled for those who advocate for it to be in our schools as, well, it's just an academic concept, and it's really only taught in law school and the university level, et cetera, which is really not true. Critical race theory at its core, critical theory, put race in there, fine. Critical theory really refers back to Marxism. It's setting up a two-class, a two-tiered system. In classic Marxism, that's, the bourgeois and the proletariat, right? The oppressors and the oppressed. You put race in that mix, and now it's who's in charge and who's not in charge, right? And so when you start weaving into our K-12 education, regardless of the location, that there is an oppressor class and an oppressed class, there are several things that you are forcing students to assume. One of the things you're forcing them to assume is that the oppressors have something to feel guilty for, and they should just freely give of some of their stuff to create equal outcomes, which is what Marx was always trying to propose, is equal outcomes, the transfer of wealth and those on an economics level. But this is really now white privilege, if you will, one of those kind of buzzwords. You're here, Tina, and so you should feel bad for Bill. So give him, relinquish either leadership, something of currency, something of value. We're just going to give it to poor Bill because Bill's down here. He's the oppressed. Well, the other set of assumptions is that I am oppressed. I don't have the resources you have. I don't have the opportunities you have. And therefore I need to be saved by you, Tina. You have to save me.
All because of
I
the
can't
color
do
of
it
your
because
skin.
of the color of my skin. And, when I look back at my life, nobody forced me to go to the Air Force Academy. Nobody told me I couldn't graduate.
Except your dad, maybe.
Well, yes, that's true. I shouldn't. Yeah, nobody gave that to me, and I didn't deserve it. I earned it, right? I was second in my class. The ACT scores are there, SATs, all that stuff was there. So nobody told me I couldn't graduate. Nobody told me I couldn't be a pilot. And frankly, no one has told me that I could or could not do anything in my career because of the color of my skin. Now, am I saying that never happens? No, I'm not denying that it does happen from time to time, but it is not set up as a class system where it's kind of universally true. The stuff that's systemic, when people talk about things like systemic racism, that systemic racism is not skin color, it's economic. It's socioeconomic. And quite frankly, if we're just going to be real about it, a lot of those needs are driven by the collective and cumulative decisions that are made, not just by the governed. I'm going to choose to make these decisions. They're also choosing elected officials that keep that dynamic in place because they enjoy the power too much to let it go. And so now we're really going to get into this just a little bit. In my opinion, each and every person that lives in these places where this is kind of systemic, you need to come off your mental plantation and do something about it.
Oof.
Vote differently. If you don't like how your community works, how your city works, then get off the plantation and vote differently to get somebody in there that is going to give you the freedom that God gave you in the first place and not going to stand in the way. So when I talk about that stuff, I don't want that kind of garbage put in front of our kids in my community. I love these families. I've served these families. These are my friends. These are my people, if you will, right? And so I want the best for them and their kids. And so I asked for the school board to just help me with that, not understanding whose job it really was, but ultimately it's their job, in my opinion. And the response I got was, well, we don't have that in our school district. And I said, well, thank you for that. I'm assuming so, but how do you know? And the answer was, well, because we don't have it here. That's not really the answer I'm looking for from my elected officials. I need something better than that. I'm a citizen, I'm a taxpayer, and I'm coming to you for redress because that's how our nation is set up. And I need you to do a better job of responding to that. And unfortunately, they weren't really willing to do that. So I'm like, well, then maybe I need to run for school. I was already going to do it, but now I've got this bigger purpose to do it. And so I ran for school board.
And the right message and the right message deliverer, I would say, for that time and the issues that were going on there. I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
I have a couple friends that are pretty close that are Black, and they came to
Mhm.
me during that time period, 2020, George Floyd, 2021,
Mhm.
and said, I've never had so many random white people that I didn't know come up to me and apologize. And I just, first time a friend of mine said that to me, I said, what they apologize for? I
Mhm.
don't understand.
Mhm.
And so did you ever have anything like that happen to you in that time period?
Some, yes. A lot more, not the outward using of the words "I'm sorry for," but more almost like a pitied look or a different way of approaching a conversation and feeling like they had to walk on eggshells because
I would say the eggshells was probably a
yeah, pervasive. It was
real result of what
honestly, it
went
was
on.
ridiculous. And when I started seeing white Congress people kneel in front of black folks and black folks standing there and being okay with it, I'm like, what a horrible equation. That both sides should really be kind of ashamed of themselves.
And all of this really stemmed from, I would say, was it White Fragility, that book? Have you read
Mhm.
that? I've read that. There's a few books that came out during that time
Yep.
period. And I have white friends that I had conversations with. I feel so guilty for.
Yeah, stop it.
I'm like, for
For
what?
what?
Because your great great grandfather. Yeah, it was such a strange time
Yes.
of what went on there.
And you talk about that stuff being in curriculum. Here's another part of that stuff. Acting like there was only slavery was only a one-way equation. It was just, white people owning black slaves. Uh, Native American people owned black slaves. White people owned white slaves. Somebody had to sell those people on the other end of the ocean. Who were they?
Yeah, it was a
African tribal
disgusting.
leaders.
It was
I
just
mean,
a
the whole thing is a
disgusting practice.
disgusting system. So you can't just point at one group of people and say, well, it's your fault. There's a lot of folks to find at fault. And they came in all shapes, sizes, and skin colors and cultures. And so let's recognize that truth. Let's also recognize the truth that since emancipation, during Reconstruction, we had, I'll give you an example. 1921, the Tulsa Massacre, the Black Wall Street Massacre. Terrible, terrible event. Obviously, I mean, businesses burned down, people lost their lives, black people lost their lives just for being black. That's awful. Has anyone asked the question? Okay, there were 60 years before that, during that. How do we get a Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma? How did that happen? Obviously, there were a lot of people who were very successful in that current system at that time. And even if the majority of their customers or maybe all their customers, maybe it was, even though it was separate economy, they still had the freedom to do that. Isn't that a thing to celebrate? These same people 40 years earlier, 60 years earlier would have been enslaved, and now they're free to do, and they were really successful. And it really bore out what Frederick Douglass said at the time, even, during the time that he was befriended with Abraham Lincoln and all that sort of. Somebody asked him, during one of his speeches, what are we to do with the black man once they're freed? And his answer was nothing. Leave us alone. Let us exercise our freedoms. Now that part I paraphrase, but his first word was nothing. So when people actually have the opportunity to exercise their freedom, they can do some amazing things. When we don't have government standing in the way of people exercising their God-given rights and freedoms, those people can do amazing things. And that is the story that we should be telling in our schools versus, whitey bad kind of a thing, slavery. Stop it. That ended in 1865. Stop it. We need to move on. For the healing of our nation, we need to move on. And it's really only folks who want to grab at power and prestige, they keep bringing it up. They want the issue to be pervasive. No,
Or they're trying to culturally divide us.
well,
And
that's how they
so,
keep their power.
yeah. And I think, there's actual examples in classrooms. We've seen them, our parents bring them forward all the time.
Mhm.
If everyone remembers back to when Keisha King went viral in a Moms for Liberty shirt at the Florida School Board meeting, it was right there in Jacksonville. Her daughter was literally put in a group titled Victims, Oppressors, and Oppressed.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so, she was rightly so very upset. And it's
Yep.
happening. It was happening all across the country. It's
Mhm.
still happening in many, many places. So
Mhm.
parents, pay attention to that this whole oppressor and oppressed labeling your child as either one for something that potentially one of their ancestors has done, or
Right.
just somebody who had the same color of skin did. It's really unacceptable in America in 2025.
And where does that go? Educationally, where does that go? One stark example is in Milwaukee Public Schools, where we have single-digit competency for reading amongst Black students.
It allows justification.
It justifies lower expectations, which we can't have. We shouldn't have that of any person. Ignore the skin color. We shouldn't have low expectations of any human being. If they need some help to learn to read, great, get them the help they need, but then expect them to do something with that, because nobody goes to school or work just wanting to do a bad job. They want to do their very best. People want to own that part of themselves. And so, and it also leads to, government overreach. In our case, Wisconsin DPI decided to change the cut scores, the definition of what is competent and what is not competent. They lowered those standards just a couple of years ago, and it applied it to the 2023-24 stats. So across the state, everybody jumped up an average of 12 points of competency, even though maybe 2% in this district or 3% would have been, right? The interesting thing, though, is that they actually created a wider competency gap along racial and economic lines,
Not surprised.
which is really interesting. So you're doing this ostensibly to help, right, or to tell a better story, but you're actually widening the gaps that you say you want to close. It's sort of like,
I think we need to do a better job about getting that message out, because I
Yes.
do feel like if most parents knew that, they should be outraged. They better be outraged.
Mhm.
We are dumbing down all kids in America
Yes.
right now. It's not okay. We have the lowest reading score since the 80s nationally, the lowest math
Mhm.
ever in the United States. And this is not going to look good for America in
Right.
the future, with the standards being lowered. And so we fight things at Moms for Liberty like critical race theory and social emotional learning
Mhm.
being corrupted for a lot of reasons. One, we believe it's wrong, but two,
Mhm.
it's actually impacting the ability to learn to read, to write, to do
Mhm.
math, and all of the things that they actually need to be successful in America.
And discipline,
Oh.
which we could spend another hour on, but teaching the lessons of self-discipline, learning to govern yourself, that is a right that we have. And it actually gets taken away from us when all we're trying to do, not all, in too many cases, we're asking our teachers to be parents too in the
Mhm.
classroom. They only have so much bandwidth. They have a job to do, and it's to educate the child, not parent the child. And when we have this pressure for equal outcomes, when you press equal outcomes instead of equal opportunities, you necessarily lower the bars of what a good outcome is to try to get everybody in, and you always fall short. That's a given. It should be a given. And we as parents and grandparents and just citizens and taxpayers need to understand whether or not we're expecting that from our own school district. Are we expecting equal outcomes? Are we expecting to help each individual student become the most educated in their chosen or gifted field or whatever? Like in our home school district, we do a great job, for example, of tech ed. Fantastic. We no longer have this broad expectation that every student's going to go to a four-year university. Our school district does a fantastic job of investing folks who want to go into the trades, right? And so that's not a cultural thing necessarily, but it is. I mean, it's allowing students to find their path, what they're really gifted at, and giving them a chance, an opportunity. Everybody has the same opportunity to excel in that area, whatever area that is.
So how did your run for school board go?
I lost both times.
You ran twice.
I ran twice, 2022 and 2024. Made a lot of friends, raised a lot of awareness. That was the biggest thing. And still to this day, people coming up to me and saying, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for running for school board. Why? Because I focused on performance. and not on, you know, looking good or how do we compare with the rest of the school districts in the state or in our county. It doesn't matter. When we have 35% of our own kids not competent and we're one of the best in the state, great, fantastic. Let's celebrate that for a minute and a half. And then let's get to work to take in the other third who are behind and helping to eliminate, to lower that number, help them get to where they need to be.
So what I hear you say is you can run for school board and not win and still have a major impact by having a candidacy,
Absolutely.
focusing on the issues that you think are important.
Mhm.
And so you did that twice.
Yes,
Would you do it again?
maybe.
Are you considering it right now? Is that why
No.
no?
No, not right now.
Okay.
I mean, no, where, you know, there's only so much time I have in a day, right? And in a week. And I have to realize that because I'm the kind of person that would say, oh yeah, that's important. I'll do that too, and take on way too much. And so, no, I Moms for Liberty's got my plate pretty full. I actually did get elected as vice chair for our local Republican Party in our
Oh,
county too. Yeah,
congratulations.
thank you. So there's some with that, that I do some things with that for sure too. And that kind of, my dance card's full right now. So
Understood.
yeah.
But lessons learned running for school board. So you built relationships. You're able to still drive the narrative and bring attention to issues by running.
Yes.
Any other positive takeaways from that experience?
I would say a reminder not to paint people with a broad brush. Don't be too quick to categorize folks, because I knocked on a lot of doors, which in my community for a school board race is like nobody does that. Nobody
Good
knocks
for
doors.
you.
I knock.
I
a lot of
love door
doors.
knocking. So
Yeah.
next time you run, you call me up. I'll come and do. I'll
If
come and
I
do a
run
neighborhood
again,
or
I
two.
will let you know. And I'll hold you to that. But a lot of people who just maybe weren't aware, and that's I think the number one lesson I have is that people, when they're aware of something, are willing to take a step if it impacts their families. Number two, I learned that, you know, that it's too often that we don't connect interpersonally. Like I actually look someone in the eye and talk to them about their own family and how maybe a different way of approaching things can help their family. People are generally open to that. Very few people actually really got kind of crazy in my face and, oh, I would never this. And, you know, I think I maybe had in those 2 years, maybe 2 people actually cuss at me. And
That's not bad. That's
yeah,
pretty
not
good.
bad. You
Not
know,
bad at all.
I will say that you also have to learn. I also learned that you knock on the door, ring the doorbell, and then you take a step back.
Oh, absolutely.
I actually had somebody point mace at me, like my
Are
fourth
you
door that I
serious?
knocked. Yeah,
I wonder if it's
but it
different.
wasn't because of my affiliation or anything. It's just that people weren't used to that. This was a little bit more remote. It was a farm, and I don't. It was, you know, 9:30, 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Why is some person I don't know knocking on my door?
Yeah.
I've got me and my kids here. So I didn't take any offense to that, but I learned that, yeah, you just got to make sure that.
I think it matters who's knocking too. My son is he's 24 now, so I don't know. He was 16 or
Sure.
17, but he was fully bearded, 6'2" at that age.
Sure.
And he would knock doors, like he'd do one side and I would do one side. And sometimes we get to the end of the street and be like, nobody answered. And I would say, oh, all 6 people answered for me.
I think you're right.
And
It does depend on who's knocking.
And
You're
if I had like my baby with me, if something, you know, bring
Yeah,
a dog,
yeah,
bring the
yeah.
baby, do what
I'll
you
have to
gotta
remember
do.
that if I ever run again.
Oh my gosh. I want to talk a little bit here, maybe in this last segment or two, about what you are doing as an ambassador in Wisconsin. What's
Mhm.
happening there? What's that work look like? Tell us a little bit more about Wisconsin.
Yeah. So our primary purpose is growth. I boil it down to one word, growth. I mean, that's what we're asked to do. And it's not just primarily it's growing the number of chapters that we have in the state. But again, to start a chapter, put a star on the county and then run away, you haven't really done anything. You want to make sure that as you're stepping away from that chapter, and what I bet by that, I mean, you're not so intimately involved in getting them started. Once they're started and they've got their legs under them a little bit, okay, now it's time for you to be fully ready. Let me know if I can come speak or whatever that might be. It's really rewarding. You know, I immediately think about, as an example, Katie, who's up in Washburn County, young mom, you know, kind of fits that profile that we're looking for, if you will. A quieter, unassuming, very Christian woman, devoted to her husband, her kids, all that stuff. She's tearing it up there, but she's doing it in a quiet way. Why? Because she's finding ways to add value in her community. And so the work that we do as ambassadors is really to create more situations like that, where we will I try to leverage the existing lists of associate members that have already signed up to be national members, but they don't have a county chapter. Try to crack that nut and see, hey, you know, what's going on in your community? What's going on where you're at? Or we try to, you know, connect with folks who maybe are local political leaders, whether elected officials or involved in their county parties or whatever that might be. Is there a need? Have you spoken about this? Have you ever heard of Moms for Liberty? And then we go there and we help them to set up an information meeting. We tell our story. We expose them to the opportunity, and then it's just a continual follow up. After that is who's really interested. How can we help? It's always got to be grounded in value, because there are some that don't necessarily see the value. Like, hey, we're doing just fine. We've got a lot of conservative board members. Da 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 da. And then, you know, do a little homework, do your cross check in that school district. And typically, I mean, it's first of all, performance, it's 35, 40, 50, 60% of the kids are not proficient in either English or math or both, sometimes more. Oh, I didn't know that. And then you look for these other indicators that, yes, you actually have these kind of Marxist ideas embedded in some of your curriculum, you know, and here's examples, and you can point out from their own curriculum or their own district website where you find these things. So it's a matter of helping them to, again, understand where the issues lie and what they can then do about it, and how Moms for Liberty helps make that happen. And that's really what the work of the ambassador is about.
Why? So you have a full-time job, you have a family, you are on the VP of another volunteer job. Why do you spend your time? Why do you think it's valuable? Why do you think it's important to grow chapters of Moms for Liberty in Wisconsin? Because you're busy, you're smart, you're a sharp man, you've got skills you could be using anywhere. Why are you putting your time into this? Why is it important?
The family, kids. First of all, it's what God's called me to do. I pray about everything. I invest in a relationship with Christ every single day. It's part of who I am, and I would not have it any other way. Part of that is not just praying and, hey, here's my list. That's not really praying. It's really having a conversation. And so you have to also listen with your heart, listen by looking at what's around you as far as circumstances, situations that are telling you, and really kind of resubmitting that back. When I think about the value that we need to add to our families, in my state in particular, we can't just assume, we can't take anything really for granted. There are issues that need to be addressed across the state with government overreach, government control. And I'm not even saying that this necessarily comes from this dictatorial desire to be evil. So often, even our elected officials don't really understand how they're set up and the influence that they have and what their role is. I actually had in my own home district school board member who's no longer on the board tell me that their only job was to hire the superintendent and then do whatever that person wanted to do. And I'm like, actually, your job is 100% not that. Well, 98%. Yes, you hire the right person, but now they're accountable to you. You're supposed to provide oversight for the operations of the entire district, which means you don't just turn them loose and rubber stamp things, right? And so I think that families and people, moms, dads, need to understand the real dynamic, the power that they have as individuals, as citizens of this nation, and how that then marries to their responsibilities as parents to direct the upbringing of their kids. And specifically, quite often that takes place with the school board or takes place in education, because that's where government immediately overlays the family life, like in pretty much every case is the education of a K-12 student. And so it's super important to me to help people understand what their God-given rights are and help them to see that interrelationship with their responsibilities as parents.
I love that answer. Their rights, how that relates to their responsibilities.
Mhm.
I would say as parents and as citizens,
Yes.
because we work hard to educate our members to be good citizens in the United States of America. We have our Madison Meetup program, which is like a book club for community members, parents, moms, dads to sit around and just read the Declaration of Independence and the
Yeah.
Constitution, which to the average American may not sound that fun, but I'm here to tell you it could be a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Before Moms for Liberty was born, that's kind of where it all came from. We were all locked in, shut down, COVID time.
Yeah.
And
I heard
Marie,
that story.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
Marie and I are on the
great.
phone, and she's like, "Well, what do you want to do? You know, we got to do something." Ugh. She's like, "I'd be happy if we just sit around and read the Constitution." And I'm like, "And the Declaration of Independence." And so, you know, we had a night at my house where it was Life, Liberty, and Chocolate, we called it, and everybody brought
Yeah.
a chocolate dish.
I love that story.
And we
Yeah.
read the founding documents. So it's turned into our Madison meetup
Mhm.
program, which we're working on a big relaunch for America
That's
250
great.
next year to really get citizens engaged in that. So have you read the Declaration of Independence and the
I
Constitution,
have,
Bill?
yes.
And you swore an oath
Swore
to
an oath.
uphold
So you
the
better read it
Constitution.
if you're going to swear an oath to uphold it, right?
Can you say that loud and clear and into the camera, please? Because there are elected officials all over this country
Right.
that have not read it, that hold up their hand and swear to it. So who? Say that again right there.
Yeah, if you're going to swear an oath to something, you should probably know what it says and know what you're devoting your life to and devoting this time to. And for me, I was willing to die for it. So it's kind of important to know what it says. So maybe you should read it a couple 100 times.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly didn't know when I ran for school board that I was going to have to take that oath.
Sure.
It's not something, first of all, when I ran for school board, you could Google, how do you run for school board? There was nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing came back.
Mhm.
Zilch, big goose egg.
Yep.
Anything. What does a school board member do? Goose egg. It was
Mhm.
really quite
Mhm.
remarkable. And so Moms for Liberty has moved into that space, and so many others now
Sure.
too,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
hallelujah. But to the point, I didn't know I was going to, I knew I had to get sworn in because that email
Yes.
came to me and we need you to come swear in.
Yes.
No one told me what I was going to say in the swearing in. And I will never forget that night. First of all, it was Judge Majid that they brought to sign me in, and he has a very heavy accent. And
okay.
so we had a little bit of trouble,
Okay.
a language barrier. And that video, part of the thing is, I will well serve. And he divided up will and well. And I thought he was saying the same word twice. And so he kept saying, I will. And I said, I will. Then he said, well. And I said, I will. And he said, no, will. And it was like this whole will, well. But what it came down to is I'll
Yes.
uphold the Constitution.
Yes.
And I literally had to like frog in throat to hear that I was going to uphold I'm going to
Mhm.
cry now talking about it. I was going to uphold the Constitution, me personally in this role. And Monique Miller, who's on our board of directors now, was in the
Mhm.
audience, and she said, I saw you, like that moment went off, like
Mhm.
you are going to uphold the Constitution.
That's right.
And I took that so seriously. It
Yes.
barely came out because of the frog and the tears that were about to come
It's
forward.
a sacred commitment that we can't just throw around lightly. And clearly in that moment, and even now I see it on your face.
Yeah, I'm dying over here. I'm
you
going to get the
didn't-
tissues out for
You
me this
didn't,
episode.
you didn't take that lightly, because to swear an oath, that is the deepest form of commitment. It's a covenant, like the marriage covenant, like the covenant Jesus made with us. It's a covenant. That's like for life. And,
Well, that's my next question. So
Yes.
you took it for the Air Force, but
Yep.
you're not in the Air Force anymore. I
Mhm.
took it for the school board, but I'm not on the school board anymore. Do you feel like that oath is for life?
Yeah, that oath never went away. I just don't wear the uniform anymore. I don't fly planes anymore. Okay. That oath never went away. And I know that it's in the context of the office, and that's part of the oath, right? But for me, that was personal. You don't just abandon that. I mean, this is our nation. This is the nation that God birthed. It is not, can I also say this in the camera? It's not a democracy. Please stop calling it a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. There's nothing like this around the world. Nothing like our nation. It is God breathed and God built. And if I'm going to make that oath, I realize now, even though then when I took the oath as a 17-year-old, I didn't really understand it quite at that point, but I've come to understand that that's not just an oath that I made because I raised my right hand in front of somebody with a microphone and, with other several hundred people there. It's an oath I made to God himself, because this was all his idea, this nation. And so, okay, and you don't take that lightly. It's not a small deal. It's a big deal.
Any last words of wisdom for those that are listening, those that might be sitting on the fence or on their couch, husbands that haven't quite stood up yet? What would you say to them?
Start with love. Understand that love is not an emotional thing. Love, it goes beyond emotion to commitment. Servant leadership gets thrown around quite a bit as a buzzword. It's a way of life. It's not just a buzzword, and it is not a means for you to get more glory or more power. That's exactly not what it is. It is expressly about other people. So maybe re-examine what it means to you as an individual, to serve other people, to have other people's interests in mind above your own. And what does that look like? I like to say sometimes that love's got to look like something, or maybe it's not love. So it's got to look, what does that look like? And what is one more? Don't think about 8 things you can do. What's one more thing you could do to advance the cause of liberty in your own home, in your community? We do have something else I discovered about some of our chapter chairs, is that it's intimidating when you see people who know a lot about all these issues, and maybe they're posting a lot about them on social media, and you feel like maybe you got to be like that person to be an effective chapter chair or whatever. No, you don't. Just start. And props Laura Ackman, who's one of our ambassadors. She is amazing at this. Helping people understand, helping our chairs and others understand. Just start where you are right now. You're planted there. There's a reason you're planted there in that school district, in that county. Start there with what you know is right in front of you. And if you don't know what's happening, go to a school board meeting, talk to some parents, create some relationships, find out how you can help. And it's just one thing. So it's okay to have small beginnings. That doesn't, just keep at it, right? Don't stop. Start small and then stay started. We used to always say,
Stay started.
yeah, get started, stay started, right? Like just kind of keep that thing sort of moving little by little forward. You don't have to solve everything. You don't have to be this dynamic speaker. You don't have to be this dynamic leader. You don't have to be charismatic. You don't have to, post all over the place. No, just care about and love the people in your community. And maybe it just starts with you and your own family, and then proceed from there.
Excellent words of wisdom. I feel like this whole time with you today, we have learned about deep patriotism. We've learned about your sense of purpose, which is God, family, country. If I had to, I'm not going to pick your order,
Nope,
but I
that's
would
right.
say God, family, country.
Everything else follows.
Yeah, I would say you're the epitome of that. So I appreciate you coming all the way to Florida in this
Thank you
humidity.
for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's an honor. It's been a great episode. Thank you for the work you're doing as Wisconsin and for your leadership. And I am going to instigate getting started a series of leadership videos by Bill. We're going to do that for sure. And so for those at home that are watching, thank you for joining us today. I'm Tina Deskovich, the CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. Our guest today was Bill Brewer. He is one of our ambassadors in the state of Wisconsin, former United States Air Force pilot, longtime coach, and a servant leader. Not as the buzzword, but as a true servant leader. We hope that you will like and follow this podcast on wherever you get your podcasts. Bill was telling me he gets his on iHeart, and we don't promote that nearly enough. So you can watch this podcast on iHeart. You can listen on Apple or Spotify. You can watch on YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. So no excuses. Please follow, download, sign up, 5 stars, give us a good comment, all the things. And until next Wednesday, thank you for joining the Fire of Liberty show.